Tonight, access denied, a border battle with a family's future hanging in the balance. The Canadian dreaming of helping an American couple complete their family.
Trying to have a family is not a criminal offense. Being a surrogate is not a criminal offense.
What's getting in the way? A long journey home. Indigenous artifacts returned to Canada from the Vatican.
So I lift up every First Nation person today, and then all this work is for you, that we begin to tell our history.
What this repatriation means in a long story of healing. And the soccer schedule that has the world watching.
When we were in Qatar, it was can they score a goal? Now it's can they get a first World Cup win?
The big reveal, fans learn what teams they'll be able to watch in Canada.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. Hundreds of couples across Canada turn to surrogates each year when they're unable to get pregnant themselves. One Canadian woman's compassion led to her offering help to an American couple. CTV's Adrian Gobriel with the shocking development that has cast one family's future in doubt and left multiple questions about the decision-making process of U.S. border officials.
A Canadian's dream of helping an American couple complete their family has been denied by U.S. Border Services.
I was escorted out through the airport by 2 armed staff members.
Though Melody, who's asked we only use her first name, isn't a criminal, she's a surrogate. On October 12th, Melody arrived at Calgary Airport's U.S. Customs pre-clearance, where she shared all her paperwork as a surrogate to travel to a fertility clinic in California where an embryo is being stored, with plans to immediately return home to Canada, where she hopes to eventually deliver the child.
The border agent told me that what I was doing is illegal, which it's not, stating that I was going down to California for financial benefit.
Surrogates visiting fertility clinics in America isn't uncommon. In an email to CTV News, U.S. Customs and Border Protection wrote that a Canadian serving as a surrogate for an American family, particularly if compensation is involved, would likely be classified as employment under U.S. immigration law, requiring a work visa. Though Melody wasn't going to work in the United States, she says she's never made any money from being a surrogate. Canadian law clearly prohibits surrogates from profiting financially.
We are allowed, though, to reimburse surrogates for expenses she incurs as a result of the surrogacy.
Melody already carried and delivered a healthy baby boy for the same California-based couple in 2018. Plans for a second surrogacy were delayed by the pandemic.
We've been trying to set this up to have a second one ever since, to kind of complete what we consider our family.
The California father, who's asked that we not use his name, fearful that going public may create more problems for Melody at U.S. Customs, believes the future of his family now hangs in the balance.
Phillips, you can come down. I don't think we're going to give up.
It's so disappointing that a governmental institution would interfere in such a relationship. This surrogate is like an angel who's going to help them have a child.
Trying to have a family is not a criminal offense. Being a surrogate is not a criminal offense.
The Calgarian will try to clear U.S. Customs once again and fly to the fertility clinic in California this Sunday in her quest to help complete an American family. Adrian Gobriel, CTV News, Toronto.
The pipeline agreement between the Liberal government and Alberta will be front and centre in the House of Commons again this week when the Conservatives look to push a vote on the deal. CTV's Jeremy Sharon with more on the political strategy over a proposed pipeline tonight.
It's an agreement Ottawa and Alberta were both happy with. But now the federal Conservatives want to put Prime Minister Mark Carney's pipeline pledge to the test.
Liberals have to unify behind the words that they promised in the MOU they signed.
A Conservative opposition motion expected in the House of Commons Tuesday, shared online by the Conservative leader, shows they'll use almost the same wording as the agreement between Ottawa and Alberta and force the House to vote on it.
But the interesting part here is this is essentially Pierre Poilievre and his party kind of endorsing the MOU in its own way. I don't actually think this is the gotcha moment that Pierre Poilievre thinks it is.
Asked whether this means he supports it, Poilievre just said Conservatives support a pipeline.
Mark Carney has got to stop speaking out of both sides of his mouth, stop saying one thing in Alberta and the opposite in British Columbia, and get his Liberal MPs to vote unanimously in favor of approving a pipeline to the Pacific.
The vote next week will come as Carney's government already faces political backlash from the deal. Stephen Guilbeault resigned from cabinet over it, and 2 of the government's climate advisors quit this week.
The MOU was the final straw, absolutely, but this isn't the first step that we've seen to the suspension, the delay, the dismantling of climate policy in Canada.
Tuesday's vote will be on a Conservative motion, of course, but also indirectly a test of support for the government's pipeline agreement. And a failure by the Liberals to whip the vote could be a political blow for the party. Heather?
Thanks, Jeremy. CTV's Jeremy Sharon in Ottawa. Conservation officials in British Columbia have called off the search for the grizzly bear that attacked a group of school children and their teacher last month. Teams were looking for the female grizzly after 3 kids and a school staff member were injured by the animal while on a field trip near Bella Coola. Conservation officials had captured and tested several bears in the area since the attack, but DNA and other forensic testing determined none of the animals were the one they were looking for. An emotional arrival at Montreal's Trudeau International Airport when a plane landed carrying Indigenous artifacts released from the Vatican collection. Leaders were on hand to mark this promise made by Pope Francis. CTV's Christine Long was there.
In the snow, a celebration for the return of cultural artifacts flown in from Rome that were taken over 100 years ago. There were also tears at Trudeau Airport because these items are a sacred extension of the communities who created them. Among them, a rare century-old kayak from the Western Arctic.
We believe that there are 14 that have Inuit provenance. The kayak is the one that we know the most about. We are looking forward to being able to unbox the items in the coming days.
Many of the 62 artifacts have yet to be fully identified and hopefully represent the first wave of more to come, says Victoria Pruden.
They were part of a display from 1925. And while the Vatican only identified one Michif Métis Abduosan item, we know that there's a journey, a respectful journey, of more examination, more partnership, more involvement.
Discussions between First Nations and Pope Francis began in 2022 to finally return these artifacts. The Assembly of First Nations says this repatriation is dedicated to the elders and to the victims of residential schools.
Survivor, whether they're here or in the spirit world, we lift you up, and to every single First Nations family who has either been, or their relative been in residential school or day school. So I lift up every First Nation person today, and then all this work is for you, that we begin to tell our history.
A chapter in Canadian history that Mark Miller admits is very dark.
The continuous denial of culture is a perpetuation of the cultural trauma that continues to rob and steal First Nations, Inuit, Métis peoples from their history and, by extension, the future of this beautiful land that we're all on.
These artifacts are going to the Canadian Museum of History in Ottawa for study and identification.
Somebody made these moccasins that we're bringing home, thinking that they were only going to be used for a hunt. They didn't know that hundreds of years afterwards, us young ones would be standing there learning about how to remake those belongings and use them, revitalize our cultures, our languages, and our protocols.
But first, ceremonies of healing. Christine Long, CTV News.
A somber anniversary today as Canada marks the tragedy of the L'Ecole Polytechnique massacre. In Montreal, 15 beams of light illuminated the night sky as part of the ceremony to honor the 14 victims killed in the attack 36 years ago. The last beam of light meant to represent all victims of femicide. Among those at the memorial, the Prime Minister.
It's, as shocking today as it was then. And yes, we've made progress. We've made progress on gun control. We've made progress in other respects, but we haven't made enough.
Ceremonies were also held in other cities today. CTV's Rahim Ladani takes us through the emotional events.
Anne-Marie Lemay.
14 roses placed in memory of each of the women who were murdered in one of the worst moments in Canadian history. The rose ceremony inside Toronto's Women's College Hospital, commemorating the 36th anniversary of the L'Ecole Polytechnique massacre.
It's important to remember the victims because the point is to prevent further victims, and that's the best thing we can do in the memory when we commemorate.
Heidi Rathjen survived the attack when Marc Lépine interrupted a lecture for engineering students in Montreal on December 6, 1989. Lépine made all the men leave the room before opening fire on the 9 remaining women with a semi-automatic rifle. He continued his attack in the halls, killing a total of 14 women and injuring 13 others. Liberal MP Nathalie Provost was also in the lecture hall that day.
I think I just take the time to stay quiet, to recognize what has been done, and to take energy to be able to do what still has to be completed.
2 years after the attack, Ottawa declared this date the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. In Montreal, Prime Minister Mark Carney attended a vigil, laying a white rose to honor the victims of the attack. However, advocates say gender-based violence remains a crisis and governments are not acting with a sense of urgency.
2 years ago, Bill C-21, important measures to remove firearms from domestic abusers are still not in effect. We're still waiting.
The calls for change are countrywide. In Ontario alone, officials report at least 44 femicides in the past year.
Toronto police released their first ever data around incidences of intimate partner violence.
Data showing that more action is needed to prevent further tragedy, as Canada marks one of the country's darkest days. Rahim Ladani, CTV News.
The homicide rate in Canada is considered a key metric for assessing violence, community safety, and social welfare. The overall homicide rate in this country dropped in 2024, but not in the Maritimes. CTV's Sarah Plowman breaks it down for us.
Brenda Tadlock-Burke loved crafts, karaoke, and pickleball.
She was full of life and just very creative and loved having fun.
In October 2024, she was living in Enfield, Nova Scotia with her husband, a former RCMP officer. Her daughter says her mom wanted to leave, but he killed her and then himself.
We had explicitly asked her, are you safe? Would he hurt you? And it was, no, I am safe.
A new analysis shows last year Canada reported 788 homicides, 8 fewer than the year before.
So homicide in Canada still only represents 0.1% of all violent crime.
The report highlights how more people were killed by a spouse or intimate partner, gang-related homicides went down, and the number of youth charged in homicide cases went up.
The number of youth homicides is very disturbing because we've got young people involved in homicides now where at one time young people were involved in riding bicycles.
While BC, Alberta, Quebec, and Newfoundland had fewer homicides, other provinces saw more. In New Brunswick, the number doubled from 9 to 18. Without more details, it's tough for this criminologist to drill down on exactly why.
In some cases, these could be a result of intimate partner violence because those numbers in Canada continue to increase. Some of these homicides could be drug-related, but unfortunately, we don't really know what the cause is.
Statistics Canada points out how Indigenous, racialized people, and women account for a disproportionate number of victims. People whose loved ones were robbed of time.
Statistics are just numbers and people get lost in the numbers, even myself. But those are human people behind those numbers.
Here in New Brunswick, the Department of Justice and Public Safety says any increase in crime is a concern, that it's analyzing the data to see what actions can be taken. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Fredericton.
To international news now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky reaffirming tonight that his country is determined to work towards a peace plan. Joined by military personnel, Zelensky presided over ceremonies to mark the Day of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. He also presented awards to servicemen and women along with families of the fallen, the event being held despite continued attacks by Russia, including a massive overnight drone barrage.
I fully support that strike. I would have made the same call myself.
U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth supporting the controversial second strike on an alleged Venezuelan drug boat in September ordered by a U.S. admiral. That strike targeting survivors of an initial attack. Speaking at a defense industry forum, Hegseth denied that he had given a blanket order ahead of the strike to, quote, kill everyone. Coming up, flu season has arrived.
Influenza does spread very aggressively across children.
Why doctors are concerned about kids as hospitals prepare for a flood of flu visits. The number of children homesick with the flu is soaring. An early flu season is to blame in some provinces, prompting health officials to once again encourage families to take precautions. CTV's Alison Bamford on the latest influenza outlook.
Every year, the chill of winter sets in, closely followed by colds and flu.
We expect this to put some pressures on the healthcare system and also in the community as well as schools.
The flu is already keeping Saskatchewan kids away from class, with test positivity gradually climbing. School absenteeism in the province reached more than 12% last week.
The concern is that the coverage for children getting the flu vaccine is relatively low.
A trend seen across the country, including at this Calgary pharmacy.
What we've been seeing is less children coming in for immunizations this year. I'm not sure what's going on, if it's vaccine fatigue still left over from COVID, or if it's a bit of miscommunication or misunderstanding.
Pediatricians in Alberta say influenza is spreading faster and earlier than in recent years, an indication this could be a challenging winter.
This is the worst part of the year for pediatrics.
Further east, Ontario and Quebec are battling a flood of flu cases. In November, the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario faced test positivity numbers 8 times what they were last year, resulting in twice as many hospitalizations. They say most kids seeking care haven't been vaccinated.
Influenza does spread very aggressively across children. And this speaks to the importance of primary prevention of it.
Despite this year's vaccine being a possible mismatch for the mutating influenza strain, doctors say it's still Canada's best bet at protection.
It does do a great job at preventing severe infections.
Doctors say there's still time to get the flu shot before transmission ramps up over the holiday travel season. The vaccination takes about 2 weeks before it starts working. Alison Bamford, CTV News, Saskatoon.
Still ahead. Flying south this winter? Pay close attention. We take a look at the changes creating confusion. As the cold weather settles in across this country, many are heading south. But this is not a typical transition for those who regularly spend their winters in the United States. CTV's Alex Karpa on the new rules creating confusion.
Traveling to the U.S. had been nothing but routine for Angela and Lee Faubert, but their latest crossing in November was a little different.
We were nervous when we were about to cross.
Lee was fingerprinted, his photo was taken, and he was told to fill out an I-94 form in order to enter the U.S.
It was good, except for I got to get fingerprinted, but I mean, the picture was okay, but the fingerprinted thing was a little bit excessive, I think.
Canadians going to the States for more than 30 days must register for their visit through an I-94 form, but some Canadians who have already traveled to the States and filled out the correct forms said they didn't even need it.
Customs officers said, "What are you flagging this paper around for? This is our I-94. She said, "It's business as usual. You don't need that form filled out.
She also said that the only way you could get in trouble if you stay longer than the 6 months days allowed.
With the confusion and changing political climate, others like Eric Fagan, who spent his winters in Florida, has canceled his plans altogether, calling it a tough decision.
We regret that we're not going down. In a sense, we met some great people, some great Americans, some great Canadians at the RV parks we stayed at, and we enjoyed our stay down there.
But no matter the situation, one immigration lawyer says it's important to be prepared.
Yes, there's additional scrutiny, but at the end of the day, if you're being honest and you're being truthful and you have a plan in hand, then you should not face any issues entering.
Both couples we spoke to say the process of going into the U.S. wasn't as bad as they thought, but hope there's more clarity and consistency for what's expected of Canadians crossing the border. Alex Karpas, CTV News, Winnipeg.
Still ahead tonight, start making your plans. Soccer fans learn the detailed lineup for next summer's World Cup. The start of the Winter Games is just 2 months away, and a key symbol of the event is now making its way through the host country. The Olympic torch will be carried through all 110 provinces over the next few weeks before landing in Milan in time for the opening ceremony on February 6. Soccer fans in BC feeling the agony of defeat today as the Vancouver Whitecaps lost the MLS Cup to Inter Miami. But as CTV's Penny Daflos shows us, they're managing to keep their soccer hopes high thanks to next year's World Cup.
20,000 soccer fans experienced the ultimate emotional roller coaster at BC Place Stadium at one of the biggest viewing parties Vancouver has ever seen.
The Western Conference champions.
As the Whitecaps faced Inter Miami for the MLS Cup in Florida. After a grim start to the game, jubilation at a tying goal. Before it all came crashing down. Each painful moment was etched on the faces of these soccer superfans.
It's a tough game to swallow.
Many had a favorite they'd been rooting for. And after experiencing the joy and pain of professional sports, appreciation for the experience.
Good cheers, good support, good love.
This season has been absolutely amazing watching them just evolve and really come together as a team. They played their hearts out.
Today we cry, but it will be proud tears. And we'll wipe them away. And we'll come back.
Canadian fans of the beautiful game are now counting down to the next big event, the World Cup in June. FIFA has now unveiled the full schedule for the tournament, including Toronto, which will host the first match with Team Canada against the winner of Europe's UEFA tournament. The other teams who will hit the pitch there are Ghana, Panama, Germany, Cote d'Ivoire, Croatia, Senegal, and a team yet to be determined. Vancouver will first play host to Australia against a European opponent to be determined. Then Team Canada, Qatar, New Zealand, Egypt, Switzerland, and Belgium will get a chance to show their skills on the country's west coast.
When you talk about best case scenario for Canada, it wasn't best, it wasn't worst, and they should be able to get out of the group here at a home World Cup.
A one-time Olympic venue, BC Place is now undergoing renovations to welcome back soccer fans for the World Cup, as well as Whitecaps fans trying to look at the bright side.
Next year, we'll fight harder.
Penny Daflos, CTV News, Vancouver.
That is our newscast for this Saturday. I'm Heather Butts. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.